When you look back at the lives of popular talk show host Ellen DeGeneres and her peer Wendy Williams, it's kind of crazy the number of scandals and controversies that the two were involved in. Though the two of them were never involved in the same scandals, both Ellen and Wendy found themselves in hot water for a lot of the same sort of pitfalls. And after looking back at it, it's hard not to wonder why Ellen seemed to be dragged through the mud much more than Wendy Williams. This isn't to say that they both don't deserve repercussions for their actions, but what made Ellen's scandals much more public than Wendy's? To understand why the public came after Ellen more than Wendy, we have to go back to 2016, to one of Wendy's biggest controversies that was quickly swept under the rug. Fans were upset with the host when she spoke out about Caitlyn Jenner and insinuated that she was not a woman before she pointed out the alleged status of her transformative surgery. Wendy is quoted as saying, "Caitlyn still has a member, so that is not until you don't, aren't you caught in limbo?" She caught a bit of backlash for this, but in the end, she never faced a serious uproar. Then, in 2018, Wendy was called out by people on Twitter who claimed that she was shooting an episode of a show while she was under the influence. Apparently, during one of her episodes, Wendy was caught slurring her words, and instead of denying the accusations or simply not responding at all, the host admitted to taking pain medication and claimed it was due to health issues. And in all honesty, that wouldn't be terrible, especially if it was due to her health. But it turns out that Wendy Williams had a history of in the past, and even ended up in a sober living home in 2019 because of it. It's great that she was finally receiving help, but it certainly casts a shadow of doubt over whether her being high while shooting an episode of a show was actually because of a health condition or not. Now, in December of 2018, the same year that Wendy was being called out for slurring her words, Ellen was making waves after the New York Times posted an article with the title, "Ellen DeGeneres is not as nice as you think." And this was publicized like crazy. The article was being shared everywhere. Suddenly, all eyes were on Ellen, and her fans were now wondering if the nice persona that she gave off on television was actually just a mask. The host denied the claims made by the article that described her as quite hostile on the set of her show. However, that wouldn't be the last time that claims like that were made toward Ellen. But we'll get to that. Her next scandal came in October of the following year, when DeGeneres was photographed attending an NFL game between the Green Bay Packers and the Dallas Cowboys. This wasn't the issue, though. The problem that fans had with the photo was that it appeared she was at the game with the former President of the United States, George W. Bush. Bush has been, and always will be, a controversial figure among fans of Ellen, and many of them scolded her for being friends with Bush, but this was quickly overshadowed by Wendy Williams in the following year. In 2020, Wendy was shooting an episode of her show around Valentine's Day, in which she spoke about a new holiday meant to celebrate the bonds between women. The holiday is known as Galentine's Day, and was originally created by Leslie Knope in the popular sitcom Parks and Recreation. Well, when Wendy was talking about Galentine's Day, the audience clapped for the holiday, and this included the men. That apparently offended the host so much that she ended up going on a homophobic rant. After the clapping began, Wendy said, "If you're a man and you're clapping, you're not even a part of it. I don't care if you're gay. Stop wearing our skirts and our heels." She then went on to take her offensive remarks a step further and say, "Gay men, you will never be the women that we are, no matter how gay, sir."
Gay men, you'll never be the woman that we are, no matter how gay, sir.
Now, these comments were met with a bit of a backlash, but not nearly as much as what happened with Ellen later that year. Later in 2020, more accusations began to surface about Ellen being a boss that runs a toxic workplace. These allegations were similar to the New York Times articles, only now even guests of the host were getting on board and talking about how rude she could be at times. The accusations began making headlines once again, and this time Ellen wasn't able to fight them off, and after her show's ratings began to decline, Ellen ended up announcing that her popular talk show would be coming to an end. Meanwhile, in 2021, Wendy Williams continued to shock her audience when she began to seemingly joke about the death of a young TikTok star. A TikTok user by the name of Swavey was only 19 years old when he was tragically killed during a shooting in Delaware in 2021. While speaking about Swavey's death, instead of being kind and respecting the young man, she went on to explain how no one in her building even knew who he was, and then proceeded to joke about the fact that she had more followers than him. This, of course, prompted backlash from Swavey's mother, who went on to call Wendy disrespectful, which is a totally fair statement. Wendy received a bit of backlash from her Swavey comments, but not as much as you would have expected. After that, the host went on to joke about how Ellen had quit during her show because of audience backlash. And then, only a few months later, she herself announced the end of the Wendy Williams show. How crazy is that? Now, after looking at all of their similar scandals, you would think that both of these hosts would have been ostracized the same way. but it seemed like the media was coming after Ellen a lot harder than they went after Wendy. And honestly, it seems like it's because of the personas that both of the hosts put on. The world wasn't really surprised that Wendy Williams turned out to be not that great of a person. She showed multiple times on her show and in her writings that she could be rude and had opinions that she shouldn't have shared with others. This wasn't news to anyone, but what was news was the fact that Ellen, the woman that always appeared to be the embodiment of kindness on her show, turned out to have a dark side to her. This is the exact opposite of what people were used to, and therefore it had a much bigger wow factor and shocked the public more. Therefore, the media ran with it, and Ellen was torn to shreds. Now, this isn't us saying that she shouldn't have gotten in trouble, and that she shouldn't have been held accountable for the way she allegedly treated people. It's just interesting that the reason Ellen got dragged more than Wendy was simply that Ellen was trying to pretend to be a good person, when Wendy never really put that persona on. What do you think, though? Was there any other reason behind Ellen getting scrutinized more than Wendy Williams? Make sure you let us know in the comments below.